Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, guys. How's life today? This is the third group. In this occasion, we are going to discuss about Neoclassical Period. Before we start our presentation, I'd like to introduce my group. The first is Ahmad Hunaili, the second is Lailatul Khairul Ummah, the third is Lukman Hakim, and the next is me myself, Farda Muslimah, and the next is Roro Ayu, and the last is Ismiat Nabila. Then we are going to discuss three big things. The first is the introduction of Neoclassical Period. The second is its characteristics, and the last is the major writer. Okay, guys, stay tuned.
Hello everyone. So in Neoclassical Period, it covers between 1660 until 1800. Which the period was divided into three parts. The first one is the Restoration period. It started around 1660 until 1700. The second one is the Augustan period. It started around 1700 until 1750. And the last one is the Age of Johnson period. It started around 1750 until 1798. So we're gonna explain it briefly, clearly, as much as we can. Matthew Arnold called 18th century in English literature as the age of prose and reason. Our excellent and indispensable 18th century. So it can be concluded that Neoclassical age is primarily the age of prose and reason. Then we are going to the characteristic. There is a precondition of literacy. In the early 18th century, literacy rates are difficult to estimate accurately. However, some sources it appears that literacy was higher than the school enrollment would indicate, and that literacy passed into the working class as well as the middle and upper classes.
Hello, my name is Lailatul Khairul Ummah. Here I will explain about circulating library and the essay. So guys, in the neoclassical era, there is a circulating library. It began in England for those who were literate in Augustan period. It is a library that open to all people, especially for women, to satisfy the desire for books reading without facing the expense of purchase. Jadi, pada masa Augustan period ini disediakan sebuah perpustakaan yang dapat diakses gratis bagi siapapun, utamanya bagi wanita, untuk memfasilitasi mereka dalam membaca, karena pada saat itu harga buku itu sangat mahal. Okay, let's move to the next topic about the essay. Essay is a piece of writing that gives writers own argument, such as journal, newspaper, and magazine. Essay is introduced by Francis Bacon in the early of 17th century during the Renaissance era, and developing during the Dryden stamp, and then reached its highest popularity in the middle of 18th century by Richard Steele and Joseph Addison, that called as periodical essay. In this era, many essays were written for female readers, and for the most part, it consists of morality, emotions, and manners.
A periodical essay is a magazine with a distinct literary flavor, published at regular intervals such as weekly, monthly, etc. It was invented by Richard Steele with his community called the Tatler. The purpose of this community is to promote morality through essay and journalism. The unique thing is that this community used such as gossips or news or fake news, and then they turn it into essay and journals with the first person perspective. Criticism is when creative writers show their interest in their essays. Criticism is a form of writing when the writer shows their critical interest about mostly poetry. But in this era, criticism on prose has been developed. One of the example is Samuel Johnson's, the first writer of English dictionary, and then another example is The Spectator by the Tatler.
Okay guys, this is Farda again. I'm going to explain about reason, rationalism, and realism. The three words has the similar meaning. Reason is one of type written or article about the human faculty of the reason and rationality. Reason is sometimes referred to as a rationality. In addition, this period is also known as the age of reason because it emphasizes the knowledge, control, rationalism, discipline, rules, and appropriateness in life and literature. One of the chief reasons for founding the Royal Society was an attempt to use science to explain and glorify the wonder of divine creation according to its charter. The new science was seen and explained to man for the first time how God worked. One common image, as you can see the slide, was God as a kind of the divine clockmaker, setting all things in order and run perfectly. The next material I'll explain is rise of English novel in 18th century. If you look at the development of English prose, we get several forms before the novel appeared. The first form is chronic. What is chronic? Chronic is the form of the novel that's report about event of the main character. This character experience adventure after the adventure before finally the author will make the main character live permanently or killed in this adventure. The example of this form is Gulliver's Travel by Jonathan Swift. The second form is plotted adventure. Unlike the previous form, which consists of standalone episodes, this plot adventure already has kind of plot that link thrilling adventure the main character experience. The example of this form is Robert Louis Stevenson, Treasure Island. And the last is romance. Romance, which is the characteristic from the event that took place in the place that felt distinct and foreign. For the example, in the Sahara Desert, or in the very first time that made possible to give rise to strange creature. The example is by Sir Walter Scott, Ivanhoe. After emergence of romance, a new genre in literary work called novel. The difference novel and the three forms before is it depends more on the display of character and motive. The novel is more complicated than the tale. The last I'll explain is the factor responsible. The following of reason of the rise of novel in 18th century England is the first, rise of the middle class. The second is newspaper and magazine. The third is rise of realism. The fourth is the role of woman, and the last is declining of the drama. Novelists in the Augustan age or the Neoclassical age is Richardson, Smollett, Fielding, son, in whose hand novel blossom, or called the four view of the novel. The example of the novel is Pamela or Virtual Reward by Samuel Richardson in the 1740.
Now we arrived at the last part of this topic, which is major writers. There are four major writers in this neoclassical era. The first is Jonathan Swift, the second is Joseph Addison, the third is Richard Steele, And the last is Daniel Defoe. Okay, the first is Jonathan Swift. He was a son of English parents. He was very wretched and unhappy at school. He might have become bishop, but he attained mastery of English prose. He became one of the greatest prose writers of the Neoclassical age. His important works are The Battle of Book, A Tale of Tub, The Weeks for the Tourist, Gulliver's Travel, etc. And the second is Joseph Addison. He was educated at the Charterhouse and later went to Oxford. He died at the age of 40. He wrote many political pamphlets but didn't get fame as a pamphleteer. He became famous only through his essays. His important prose writings are The Tatler, The Spectator, The Guardian, etc. And the next explanation will be delivered by Ismi Atta. Thank you.
Hi everyone. Now, I will presentation about my job. The first is Richard Steele. Richard Steele, born on 12 March 1067 and 2, and he was dead on 1 September 1072 and 9 in Carmarthen, Wales. He was an Irish writer, playwright, politician, and remembered as CEO founder with Joseph Addison. He most unfortunately or unlucky because of his own actions. He studied at Charterhouse, then transferred to Oxford without taking a degree. However, they created a famous prose entitled, one is The Funeral or Drama, second, The Guardian, and the third, The Englishman, and the fourth, The Reader. Okay, move to the next slide. And the second is Daniel Defoe. Daniel Defoe is a writer who comes from London. He was also the best prose writer of his day. Daniel is a reflection of historical assumptions about social needs and not an essential economic characteristic. His principle is that he likes to praise and make the middle class people happy for effective social organization in order to fight for productive market efficiency. Literary works that were created, namely first is The Deserters, second is The True Englishman, and the third is Robinson Crusoe, and the fourth is Roxana, and the last is New Voyage Round the World. Jadi, Daniel ini merupakan orang yang sederhana, tapi dia memiliki jiwa sosial yang sangat tinggi kepada masyarakat. Daniel pun juga suka bergaul dengan masyarakat yang kelas sederhana atau kelas menengah, dan dia juga mengajak untuk mengikuti organisasi sosial secara efektif demi memperjuangkan efisiensi perdagangan yang sangat produktif di era tersebut. Terima kasih.
Okay guys, that's all from us. We're sorry about the mistake. We hope that you all understand about the material today. Thanks for your nice attention. See you. Wassalamualaikum.